Good morning, I'm Steve Rosansky, President and CEO of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to our July edition of Wake Up Newport. Unfortunately, my compadre with this meeting, Alberto Sandoval, couldn't be here this morning, so I'll be handling my duties and his. It's obviously a great day here at Newport Beach. We've got a great speaker, and we have a few people in the audience that I'd like to introduce before we get started. And then towards the end of the meeting, I'll have a few closing comments and mention a few meetings that we have come up that you can join us for in the future. So with us this morning is our former mayor and Citizen of the Year, Tom Edwards. Tom and the other 19 Citizens of the Year are going to be meeting at the end of this month to pick the 2022 Citizen of the Year. So we'll have a big announcement probably sometime in early August. It's always a surprise for them. We kind of surprise them at a meeting and we go, hey, guess what? You're Citizen of the Year. Howard Herzog's here with us, Civil Service Board member. Howard, where'd you go? Back there. Paul Watkins, Board of Library Trustees. Thanks for coming, Paul. Don Yon, you're still a Harbor Commissioner, right? All right, reappointed. Another 3 more years? 4 more years. You know, they reappoint you if you don't get it right the first time, they reappoint you so you have 4 more years to figure it out. No, he does a great job there in the Harbor Commission. We have a beautiful harbor. So I'm just going to launch right into it. I think that's all we have. So as I said this morning, we have a great speaker, Shari Friedenrich. She's an active licensed CPA and was elected as the Orange County Treasurer in 2010. Was re-elected in June 2014 and June 2018. She's actually going to have to update her bio because she was just re-elected again, right? You don't have, Shari, you don't have to run in the... No, you're it, right? She ran unopposed. She's working for us she's another 4 more years. So 2018 and 2022 ran unopposed in 2014, 2018, and 2022, as I just said. Shari's the first woman ever to be elected as the Orange County Treasurer and only the 4th woman elected in a county-wide race. Really, that's interesting. Shari held the highest vote total of 451,000. Did you beat that this time? 478. 478? She's an overachiever, right? 478,000 votes. In a ballot certified by the Orange County Registrar of Voters in June 2018 and again in 2022. Well, they haven't certified it yet though, right? Oh, did they? Oh, it's official. There you go. Okay. In her 11 years in office, Shari has saved almost $1 billion for Orange County taxpayers. As Orange County's treasurer, Shari is responsible for investing $12 billion of public funds, is an ex-officio member of the 9-member Orange County Employees Retirement System, I think it's called OCERS for most people, managing $21 billion, a member of the county's Audit Oversight Committee, the Deferred Compensation Committee, the Public Financing Advisory Committee, and the OCERS Audit Committee. I'm surprised she even has time to show up here this morning. So busy. She graduated summa cum laude from Washington State University with a degree in business and an emphasis in accounting. She previously worked for Deloitte & Touche as a audit manager at Boeing Corporation as a division controller and at the City of Huntington Beach, where she was the elected treasurer for over 15 years, where she was the first woman CPA in this position. I'm going to turn it over to Shari.
Well, good morning. Wake up, Newport. We're here, right? It's early, and I see a lot of people here that I know. It's so great to be back. It's been a number of years since I've been here, and so I'm so honored. And Steve, thank you for having me back. Well, happy belated 4th of July. I know that's a very special time for our country, celebrating our birthday, and I hope you all were safe and sane this last weekend. Congratulations also to the Chamber on the 115th year, really helping businesses and communities, promoting economic opportunity, and also enhancing the social and civic environment of Newport Beach. Very important and plays a role in the community. I am a proud member of the Huntington Beach Chamber of Commerce for over 25 years and understand the value of the Chamber. I did spend about 16 years in private industry, as Steve mentioned, and I understand some of the challenges faced by business, and I have worked hard to bring common sense leadership to local government. As said, in the last 7 years, my goal is on public funds and how can we save those public funds. So I've saved about $1 billion for the taxpayers, for you. And probably one of the most important things I did was in the area of pension plans. When you have a pension plan, there's liabilities, and I was able to change the amortization. I found out we had negative amortization, which for any of you in the wealth management or banking or debt, that means essentially that every year your debt grows instead of going down. And then at some point you have to pay the price, and you have to pay huge amounts. So we eliminated negative amortization, and it saved over $525 million by making this simple change from 30-year to 20-year amortization. Anyway, it's been my honor to be elected and re-elected this last month as your Orange County Treasurer. Government should work for our taxpayers. I plan to cover 4 key points today. I think we've got about 30 minutes with questions, so I'm going to try to go through fairly quickly. I'm going to talk about what are my duties as treasurer, because you probably don't even recognize that maybe I'm elected and maybe you don't know what I do. Where do your property tax dollars go? Something that's important because both homeowners and businesses and boat owners and aircraft owners all pay property taxes. And then I'm going to talk about 2 things that happened during COVID that I think were important, and some decisions we made early on that really helped the county. And then I'm going to talk about the county's financial position briefly, and then I'm going to close with some property tax tips. And I do have on the back, I have a property tax top 10 tip list, and so feel free to pick that up. And I do have my business cards in back also if you'd like one for property tax reasons. I'm there to work for you at the county. So as a treasurer, essentially I revolve 100% around public funds. That is my sole job. I don't set policy, and I have 2 main duties. First is the treasurer function, which the most visible part is, of course, the public funds and investing of those. We put a report on the web every month, and that makes sure it's transparent. I'm responsible for the county's receiving, depositing, collecting, and investing of those public funds for the county. In addition, I am the banker for the school district. So if any of you either have had kids or grandkids in the school system, I'm the banker, and I basically receive all of the funds for all of the school districts and the community colleges here in Orange County. So second is my tax collector function, and that's the function you may be more aware of, because we do send out the annual tax bills. We have the secured tax bills, which is on real property, and then we have the unsecured tax bills, which are on business property and boats and aircraft. And those are the business assessments. In addition, I do sit on, as Steve mentioned, several boards that, again, help my expertise to benefit the county. So on the treasurer side, I do invest over $12 billion of your funds, and about 50% of those I invest on behalf of the county, and about 50% I invest on behalf of the school districts. So we need to make sure that when we invest those, we are looking at their cash needs for both of those 2 quite different entities. The types of investments that I invest in are really restricted by state government code. We're only allowed to invest in bond or fixed income investments. We are not allowed to invest in equities unless on the pension plan we are allowed to invest longer term. So again, very important. We can only invest out 5 years, but the funds that I invest are really for working capital. So for you businesses and taxpayers, working capital is things you need to make payroll, you need to pay vendors. So again, it's not something that you want to take a lot of risk with, because if you can't make payroll at the end of the month, that's not good, because you've got to go into debt perhaps to pay that, and it's very difficult to then make ends meet, and certainly the county wants to make sure we provide all of the services. Our objectives for public fund vesting are, in order of priority, first, safety. You know, your tax dollars you entrust to us, we want those to be there when they need to be spent by our Board of Supervisors. Second, liquidity. Liquidity is very important. You could have all the money in the world, but if you can't actually pay your bills because it's all tied up in illiquid assets, doesn't do you any good. And then lastly, we do try to focus on yield, but it is the third objective, but we do try to get a market rate, because you should get return on the assets, but it's not going to be that risk type taking that you may take in your 401k or other retirement plan. And so during the last 22 years, both at the city and here, I've been very blessed. I have a perfect record of safety, and I've never lost a dime of taxpayer money, and it helps me to sleep well at night, which is very important, and those that I invest for, the taxpayers, and then of course the policymakers. So on the tax collector side of my responsibilities, I do collect those property taxes. You'll see my name on the top of that tax bill every year, and our phone numbers are there, our emails are there. If you need to contact us, we are here to serve you. We don't collect them just on behalf of the county, but we collect them on behalf of about 200 more agencies in the county. And by law, secured taxes are basically paid twice a year. This is a little different than your state and local, or state and federal income taxes. Mostly those are paid through payroll every 2 weeks or every month, or if you are an independent business, you may pay them quarterly. So quite different cash flow for local government than for the state, who tends to get that money in really every month. Obviously, when they get the payments for the income tax with the tax returns, that could be a substantial amount also. But unlike the state, which owns really 100% of those funds, the county, as I mentioned, collects on behalf of 200 agencies, so we don't own those funds. And I'll talk a little bit about how much the county gets and how much Newport Beach gets and how much other agencies get. Couple of statistics: we expect to bill over $8 billion this year in our secured property taxes. As of the end of last year, we recorded a collection rate of 99.3%. It was just below our record of 99.4%. I think we are the highest rate of collection for a large county in the state. LA seems to put 99.9 down, but I can't believe that in LA they're getting that. I think they're using penalties to help offset that collection rate. But so it's possible that maybe we are second, but we have a very high collection rate. And my goal is to not have you pay penalties. My goal is to have you understand the taxes, pay them as due, because it is a requirement. And so having a high collection rate is important. It means that we aren't going to hopefully sell anyone's property. And actually, we've canceled our property tax auction, I think, 3 of the last 4 years, which is good. That means people are paying. We're not having to auction off, because we are basically the holder of last resort, and those agencies, 200, need those tax dollars to do their services. So we expect to bill about 850,000 bills, and they will come out in mid to late September. As soon as the bills are mailed, we put them online. So one of the websites, if you haven't been there, it's octreasurer.com. It has all of the copies of every single tax bill we issue. For privacy reasons, we do not include the address on the secured bills. That address is, the owner and address is owned by the assessor. But for the business, the unsecured bills, we do have that information there, because that is a public. You're a business and you are publicly available. This year's the property taxes will go up the full 2%. As you know, Prop 13 protects your property taxes from going up to market value, but it does allow it to go up by CPI, and this year the full 2% is there, because of course inflation is well above that. We have an average property tax bill of about $7,400, so paying that property tax is probably one of the single largest expenditures that taxpayers may pay. That's on the secured side. Again, we collect the taxes on behalf of many local agencies who depend upon that between 4% and 50%. These are revenues that pay for their public safety, the city roads, and other general services. Here in Newport Beach, property taxes represent about 33% of the total budget. So when you look at the city's budget here, 33% of it comes from the revenues that I collect on behalf of the city. The sales tax is about 11.5%, and TOT is about 7%. Again, things have changed a little bit with COVID, but I do think that obviously, like in the hotel industry, of course, there was probably no TOT coming in, so they relied more heavily on property tax. So I feel that fiduciary responsibility to make sure that I'm collecting, and again, it's communicating with the taxpayer clearly, letting them know what they're being billed for, what those taxes are for, so they can then go ahead and pay. So the next question is, where do your property taxes go? We talked a little bit about Newport Beach in total. So the majority of our taxes here in Orange County, out of that $1, go to schools. 63 cents of every dollar goes to schools. Now, Orange County is unfortunately what we call a donor county. So some of our taxes, that 63 cents, goes to Northern California schools. So unfortunately, when Prop 13 was put in place in 1978, it was based on existing taxing rates. For those of you who might have been here in 78, we were a lot of orange fields and orange groves and a lot more rural than we are today. So we had a very low tax base. So what happened is Los Angeles, San Francisco, the ones with larger tax bases, then had larger allocations out of this property tax dollar. So that is unfortunate. I know that our legislature, it's not in mine, it's really the state is the one that can fix that, but at this point, that is the fact, that they get a lot of the taxes. Now, the County of Orange gets just 5 cents of the property tax dollars. That compares to Los Angeles, who gets 24 cents of the property tax dollars, and Sierra County up in Northern California gets over 50%, and then the city and county of San Francisco gets over 60% because they have the city and the county side. So again, I think we are the lowest in the state of the 58 counties in just getting 5 cents. We get a cent for the libraries, but I think here in Newport Beach, the library is owned by the city, so I don't know that any of that dollars comes here, but the county does own some libraries around the county. So then, we talked about schools, we talked about the county, cities. So cities get on average 11 cents of that $1 in your property taxes. Special districts like the vector control, some of the water districts may get on average 11 cents. The former redevelopment successor agencies get 10 cents. That pays for debt service because they were dissolved several years ago. So Newport Beach gets 17.6 cents on the dollar, a little higher than the 11 cents that is on average. Laguna Beach gets the highest. They get 23.9 cents on the dollar, and Port Laguna Wood gets only 0.009. So really a fairly discrepancy. Obviously Laguna Woods was newer, so some of the newer cities get much less. Now, in most cities, they have 2 or 3 main revenue sources. As I mentioned, Newport Beach has really the top 3. I mentioned property tax, sales tax, and TOT. The county, on the other hand, really has all of its eggs in one basket. And we only have mostly property tax. We rely on, for our discretionary funding, 94% of our revenue comes from property taxes. Now, the good thing for us is that over the last, I think, 30 or 40 years, there's only been 4 times where the average for the county has been below 0. So that means it's actually been a very stable source of revenue for the county, which is good. This year, I'm going to talk about the roll just was released by the assessor, and the average county increase was 6.37% from last year, for about $44 billion more in assessed value this year than at the same time last year. Last year's increase was only 3.47%. As I mentioned, this year was not quite double, but 6.37. So up substantially. I'm sure you've seen that in some of the house prices, and the real estate prices obviously is pushing that. The turnover of houses as people move from Prop 13 to full market value also has impacts. So Newport Beach had the 10th highest assessed value increase at 7.09%. Slightly higher than the average, which was that 6.37. It's up just under $5 billion here for assessed values in Newport. Dana Point had the highest assessed value increase at 8.96, so they're really almost 9% increase this year. They were followed by Costa Mesa at 8.90%, just your neighbor over here. Irvine did have a higher total increase in total assessed values. They had an increase of almost $5 billion. But versus Newport that had the increase of $4.7 billion. So they beat you out there, but you are a little higher in assessed value. So a couple of points I want to make about COVID that happened, just to let you know that government was working for you during that period. It was certainly very devastating to really everyone, and a lot of things happened. The first major COVID financial issue that we experienced were those 2 emergency FOMC meetings that reduced the short-term interest rates in March of 2020 to 0. Obviously, I mentioned we do look at making money through investments in terms of interest yield. But when interest rates are zero, it's much more difficult. And as we know, there was inflation during that period, so we were losing purchasing power. But we were, of course, we have to look at the market rates, and that's what we have to use to create that, and market rates dropped to zero. We knew that would be so critical for our local agencies, these 200 agencies that get property taxes in. And the second related issue was really the volatility of the equities market. That definitely had an impact on a lot of the credit ratings of companies who also issued bonds. So we were blessed, and our good news was our public funds were in items that were triple or double A rated and higher. So we did not see any of these significance. The state allows us to go down to single A, and at this time we had been consolidating into higher rated securities for a couple of reasons, and the timing was perfect. So basically our portfolio didn't really hardly move when this happened because we didn't have any issues with credit ratings. There were other counties that had banks that were foreign. They were U.S. based, but they had foreign names that people couldn't quite understand, and it was a little more difficult explaining. But my board was very pleased that we didn't really have any impact from all of this volatility that were there. In addition, because we had seen it coming a little bit, and as a CPA, you know that you need to have the money in the bank or earning interest in short term if you have a sudden impact to any revenues. And of course, no one knew what was going to happen on when COVID started, but we expected there could be some liquidity needs. So we started building up our short-term liquidity so that we would have more liquidity needs in case we needed it. And that was important because initially, of course, businesses, no one had cash coming in because your businesses were closed. Again, we also had to make sure that the schools, who is one of our clients, was able to make payroll along with the county. So moving that into short-term liquidity was a safe thing and important for us to do. Secondly, with the governor's order coming on March 19th in 2020, we had to close our public service counter. With that, they closed everything that was non-essential. And that meant we really had to rely on online payments or other methods of people paying property taxes because the property tax due date was just 3 weeks away on April 10th. So it was really a shock to us. And one of the items that happened is that property taxes usually don't get paid until the last 10 days before the due date. Actually, the due date is November 1st and February 1st, but the last timely payment date is that December 10th and April 10th, and so most people pay then. So we, of course, hadn't got a lot of money in. But one of the things that we had been working on, that since I came from private industry, I was focused on working on our website, making it easy to pay. I don't know how many of you may have paid on our website using an e-check or your bank account, maybe a credit card, but we've worked very hard to get that very efficient. And we have about 500,000 people that pay every installment on that website. So it's very easy for them. We really focused on that, and that was a savior because people were already used to paying online. We also had added many changes to our tax process that really benefited us during COVID. We had added prior year bills online. The CPAs like this because they need to get prior year taxes, and they can just go online, put in your address or your APN number, and pull up the last 12 years of taxes. So very easy for them. We initially didn't give a receipt online. So I said, no, we have to have a receipt online. We need that receipt to come out quickly. It comes out in about 30 seconds after you pay or you've submitted your payment. Again, very important, the receipt has your property address on it because I can't tell you how many people, when we just had APN on the website, paid their neighbor's property tax. Not good because you're one digit off. So we started on the first page, you select by one, and then on every page after that, your address is there. So hopefully, and on your receipt, you will say, oh, this isn't my property, and you'll stop before you finish that transaction. We also added an international credit card option. We do have a lot of foreign taxpayers that own property here, and of course, they are taxpayers. We want them to be able to easily pay, so they can now pay online using an international credit card instead of sending us from their bank and then having us exchange it because we really don't accept it unless it's in US dollars. But we, of course, have to deal with these. So it really made our life a lot easier. We reduced our credit card fee by about 10%. Not a lot, but every little bit helps because government is not like a retail shop. They can build the service fee into their price. we have a tax. The tax has to go to a vote of the people, so we can't actually change that. So that's one of the reasons why we actually require that service fee to be paid, is because we cannot build it into the price like many other retail companies can do. We added a text option to our information reminders. So if you haven't signed up for the information reminder, it's on the property tax tips. That will remind you when the property tax bills are mailed. They're then available online, and if you don't get it, you can print it there, and it reminds you right before the payment dates, because we don't want you to have to pay that 10% penalty. It's very expensive. So then we have increased our e-check payments really annually by about 15 to 20%, which is great. So right now, our total electronic payments are just under 70%. That includes the payments from your mortgage company, which are electronic, your e-check payments, any payments that you may make online, but that really helps make us as government more efficient. And for this COVID instance, it was critical because we didn't allow you to come in the office. We did break several online records. Just to give you a few statistics, on the 9th and 10th of April that year, we had over 36,000 bills paid, about $200 million paid. We had 1.6 million unique hits to our website. We did not experience the issue that you might have had with either the EDD or the DMV. We had scaled up, and so I hope none of you saw any significant blip in any of our operations, and that's planned. We wanted to make sure that we could scale up and be there for you, and we didn't expect COVID to happen, but it happened, and we were able to get those paid. So then the second thing, with those two critical items, it did come at the worst time for taxpayers, and unfortunately, state law. Everything I do is based on state law, so I have to follow that. It tells me that I have only very limited ways to cancel penalties. Well, I can tell you that a lot of the taxpayers didn't want to take their available cash and start paying property taxes on April 10th because they needed to make payroll. All of a sudden, their revenue streams stopped. And so we went to the governor and said, we need to have a solution. And our legal counsel says, nope, there's nothing in the code. And finally, he came out and said, yeah, I think county treasurers should be able to waive fees for COVID financial issues. So we immediately went to our counsel and they said, he did say that, so it must be he intends to do something, and so they allowed us to start, which was great because we really had no other way to help our taxpayers. So he finally came out in May and issued an executive order. You're probably familiar with those now. There's been a few issued, but one of them really benefited us, and so at the end of the day, we were able to save about 3,600 taxpayers over $6 million in penalties by waiving those because they qualified for that exemption on that. And very important. In fact, today, if you did pay a penalty back for a certain period of time, we will accept that penalty cancellation. We'll review it. If you meet the qualifications, we would then refund you that money. So that's on the tax tips also. So essentially, we had some help that we were able to do for businesses. Not much because, again, state law really restricts what I can do. But I worked with the assessor. Currently, the state law allows for $10,000 to be exempted from tax for unsecured tax bills. And we were at $3,000. So we initially moved last year up to $7,500. So if you're a small business, you have to identify all of your business equipment, your furniture, if you're a boat owner, and you can exempt up to $7,500 now, and we were able to send 40,000 less tax bills and save taxpayers over $2.5 million. And these are mostly small businesses. So then, we then said, okay, the board approved that, let's go to 10,000, which is the state limit. So this year, the unsecured bills are just going out. I think there's about 5,000 less bills. It's not as many because it's a smaller portion going up from 7,500 to 10,000, but that will be exempted. So those taxpayers who can stay under 10,000 of business equipment, your boats, you will no longer pay property taxes. And this is the same 1% tax you pay. So moving on to the county's financial position. Pretty much the county, after the bankruptcy, of course, back in 1994, got their act together. They really were very fiscally conservative in the types of things they've done. They were AAA rated on their debt, which is great. That was from Fitch, and that's the tribute to the county. We have the lowest debt level in all of the I think in all of the large counties, we really don't issue very much debt at all, which is good. That way you don't have to worry about that debt repayment. We do operate on just 5 cents, as I mentioned, so we're very lean compared to other counties that have a lot more tax dollars coming in. And we also do receive our sales tax. We have our enterprise fund like the John Wayne Airport, which of course was hit very hard initially by the travel ban and those types of things, and now is really coming back. I don't know if you've been there lately, but it's been packed. So obviously it's coming back to pre-COVID levels. Our property and sales tax are primarily those that fund those general government services. And as I mentioned, 94% of it is coming from those property taxes. So our tax base is not diversified, but as you can see, the stable tax base has really helped the county. In fact, the state flipped several types of sales tax and other taxes, the vehicle license fee, we gave it to the state, and the state gave us property taxes, and it really benefited us because, of course, sales tax initially took a huge dive also on that. And so over these, this COVID period, it was a very challenging time for businesses and for local government because initially we expected there could be a lot of lower revenues coming in. Certainly, we were hoping not from property taxes, but we knew some, and then sales tax, of course, was gone to almost nothing. The federal government did come through initially with the CARES Act funding, and so the county got $525 million, and that was to be spread between all of the smaller cities, those under, I think, $500,000 here in Orange County. And so it did provide a well-needed boost because, of course, as many of you know, especially businesses, you had to buy PP&E, you had to do all these new things that you didn't do before. If you weren't automated, you need to get your systems up to speed. You were trying to adapt to the new environment. So that was definitely beneficial. In addition, we received ARPA funds. We received a first deposit of $325 million, and then just last month we received the second deposit of $325 million. So local governments are actually doing well in cash. Those requirements did not have to be spent within a year, so the county does have those funds. We obviously have our healthcare agency that is working very closely on all of the types of health issues, a lot of costs, so they have been able to pass some of those on to the vendors. But initially you saw the county out at the, testing for COVID out at Disneyland and setting up all those functions. So a lot of significant upfront costs, but now obviously that's going down, but there still are costs that are out there. So we just passed our budget, and they were able to restore a significant number of positions. The COVID money is one-time money, but the revenue and the property tax really has still been there. We talked about how strong it is, and obviously the county needs to provide those services to you as taxpayers. So those are, certainly important for us to provide. So with that, I'm going to talk about just this top 10s list of the tips. I'm going to just cover a few of them for you, and then we'll open it up for questions. So the first thing I think is important, and it's great if you're a homeowner, if you're a real estate agent, or in the property tax field. We developed a new app called Mello. It's mello.ocgov.com. It's a GIS map, and it has the whole county. You can put in the address, or I think you can put in the parcel, and it'll take you to that location. It gives you a link to your tax bill. It tells you a lot of information about your property. Very helpful. It also has, tells you if you have Mello-Roos, which isn't as prevalent here in Newport Beach, but in South County it's much more prevalent. It also tells you if you have a PACE loan. A PACE loan is one of those loans that you can get to provide energy efficiency. And again, they're on the tax bill. So if you're buying a house and there's a PACE loan, what's going to happen to that loan? Do they pay it off? Do you take it? So important things, but it's really helpful. You can hover over properties next to you and see their rates. Again, remembering that Prop 13 has a big impact. You can't say my market value is lower than theirs. It's just probably the timing of the purchase. But very important map if you haven't gotten to that. We've also introduced some property e-guides for new homeowners and for businesses that give you some snapshots of some things to look out for. You can go to our website at octreasurer.com, and all this information is on here. On the first page is very graphically done. We just converted to a new website. We are in the process of converting the other pages, but the first page really has a lot of great information to get you almost anywhere you need. Again, I talked a little bit about we don't want you to pay that horrible 10% late fee. So sign up for a information reminder. We have them for both secured property taxes. We have them for unsecured property taxes, which are billed basically annually in July and due at the end of August for those businesses and boats. And then we also have a tax auction that you can get information on. I can tell you we auction off probably every couple years several Newport Beach Coast timeshares. So if you're interested in getting a timeshare, those are ones that you might buy. You might find a good deal, you might not. Our role is to put it out there. Probably the last thing I think important for businesses is we've added a name search for unsecured businesses. So for unsecured businesses, you can now go in on our website, which is octreasury.com/OC tax bill, but you can get it at the top, just go to property taxes, and you can search by your company name. And I can't tell you how many businesses have moved, and their property tax, they didn't change the address with the assessor, they don't have it, and they're getting 10% the first year, and then it's 18% interest. We are the lender of last resort. So that's probably the last tip I want to leave you with. I've been honored to work for the county and for each of you these past 11 years. I will continue to implement these common sense leadership changes and try to make sure that local government is working for you. I look forward to working with you. I do have my business cards for the county back there, along with a kind of a little card on property taxes, and we have the tax tips. So can I open it up for questions here? All right, let's open it up for questions. I've got one right here.
Are there any circumstances that could cause our secured property taxes to go down?
Well, of course. I mean, things do go up and go down. As I mentioned, in the last 40 years, the average has gone below zero. So we are a function of property taxes. Now, the good thing protecting us is there's a lot of people at Prop 13 that are well below those market values. So those are not going to go lower, because they're probably still quite low. So you have that stable base. You also have, obviously, as new properties get sold, if they're being sold, that will then be incorporated in. But certainly everything can go up and down, and it is something that is, we don't know what tomorrow will hold. So it is something that the county needs to prepare for, because we do have all of our eggs kind of in that basket. But it hasn't happened, but who knows? I mean, every 100 years we had a pandemic, right? We had one. So, yes. Yes.
What's your position on the split tax roll?
As a treasurer, there's lots of issues on it. Certainly, for the county, we don't actually have the ability to split it. When the assessor sends me the roll, it doesn't say it's a business, it doesn't say it's commercial, it doesn't say it's anything. So there would be a huge cost for the county to start tracking these. Obviously, that's one thing to be considered. I think that when you look at the last years, there's been adequate compensation to pay for. I mean, if you had a business and you had an automatic 2% increase every year, you'd be very happy. So I don't believe that certainly those taxes are, need to be higher for any reason. So if that kind of gives you the angle that I'm looking at, obviously I have to be careful. I'm representing the county, but certainly I am for lower taxes and for fiscal accountability for those. And so obviously, there is loopholes of people who take advantage in every industry. I'm a CPA, there's loopholes. How can we reduce those to make sure that everyone fairly is paying those? But certainly, property taxes has been a great revenue source and has continued to help local governments in those areas. But they have to balance their revenues and expenses. Yes?
One quick question. Your tax tips, is it only on your website, or is it distributed somewhere else for the county? That's number one. And the second one, what specifically would have to be done to change our donor capacity?
So the first question is, where is property tax information on the website? There is a couple of places. On my website, it's mostly related to the bill access, and the payment. We do not have information that goes down to how many units or how many bedrooms or that would normally be owned by the assessor, and they do not have that on their website. So I would say most people go to our website for individual property tax information. On the auditor controller site, there's information on agencies. They handle the tax rate area. And if you look on your tax bill next time, you'll see that there is tax rate areas, they're called TRA units, and there are codes, and so they break those out. We just look at collecting the total tax, we hand the tax to them, and then they break it out to say, okay, Newport Beach gets this piece. So the information on all of that is at the auditor controller site. So if you go to ocgov.com, you can go to departments, you can go to the treasurer's department. Ours is easy, it's octreasurer.com, but you can also go to the auditor controller site and you would look at the tax reports. And there is a lot of statistics there that would have that information on it. So if that helps. Now the second one, you talked about the donor base. I'm not quite sure I understand your question on the donor base.
Currently, what, we only get 5%.
Oh, 5 cents. Yes, the donor county.
Yeah, how do we,
There was a time when we did receive an additional, I think it was 20 or 40 million by a legislative item. As you probably know from your legislative committee, we don't get a lot of support here in Orange County. So it is harder to get bills passed through, and of course, no one wants to take away the money. My suggestion is that, you know, you look at going forward, so it kind of is like the redevelopment. You don't lose anything today, but going forward, we need to help make these more comparable. But it's hard because someone is a loser on that, and that is very difficult. But it is your state legislator that has all of that control, and the governor would have to obviously, you know, sign that bill. So it really is legislative related. Yes?
Hi, my name's Steve McNally. You know, you're quite the dynamo. I love it. So my question is intergovernmental transfers.
Mm-hmm.
What percentage of the budget is that? You may or may not know. It might be more of a finance question, but do you also invest that? So when all the state money is going to start flowing through the school districts, and that comes to you, who you invest it for that?
So the question is on intergovernmental transfers, who handles that, how much is that, and then for any of the new state budget which significantly increased school funding, well, will that be invested? So on the first one, I don't get involved in the details on the funds, but I can tell you that if there is intergovernmental transfers, you pay interest on it. There is a specific process, so someone just doesn't get something for free. Whoever that fund that owned it does get interest on that. And if we are doing service like we currently do, we assist with utility billing for the city of Westminster because we have a huge remittance processing. We're very automated. We have all the latest equipment, and so we charge them just cost. So if we are doing work for another government agency, we're not making money. We're just charging them cost, and actually it helps us because property taxes come in at, you know, specific times, and this fills out the rest of our year. It helps us take advantage of some of our equipment. So there are times when government does assist others, like animal care, certainly is a countywide, and then they have different cities that help to cover those costs because economies of scale is really important. You know, we're the banker, we consolidate that so we can have those economies of scale both on that and in investing. It's much easier to invest $12 billion than saying, okay, I have 100 entities that invest $1 million each. I can invest on a total basis and then we allocate. So that hopefully is the first question. On the second, we do invest all the school funds, so we would work with them on cash flow, cash forecasting when those funds are needed, but they would go into our county pool. Thank you. Any others? Yes, I've got a question here.
I think his first comment was that you are so dynamic, and I'm really surprised. I mean, if you motivation of a speaker, you'll be a billionaire in 1 week. I've never seen anybody that bubbly. Is it a government job? Is it being a woman? I've never seen that.
Well, you know, you should do what you enjoy, and I enjoy serving and making a difference for taxpayers. I mean, I was in private industry. I was probably one of the more unusual ones because I wasn't that boring accountant and back, but my mom was Italian and my dad was Icelandic, so I think I got a little of the hot and the cold and it came out. But you know, you should do what you love, and I really do enjoy educating. I mean, I could see and looking at you, you don't know some of these things, and that's what government should be doing. You should know where your tax dollar goes. And of course, we have limited resources to get it out, so I try to do this, and luckily I appreciate your compliment. I will take that as a compliment that hopefully I'm able to educate and get the information out to you, so thank you. Yes. Let's see, I see another question here, and I know we're just about, so it's up to Steve to make sure that he keeps us online. All right, we've got a question here.
Real quick, kind of confused. Where do most taxes go to? Schools, okay? So we came down here to go to schools, our kids from LA.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying 5 cents goes to 5 cents out of our tax dollars goes to our schools, and the rest, no,
No, so schools get 63 cents of the tax dollar. So your tax dollar is broken into like 5 different pieces. 63 cents goes to schools, 5 cents comes to the county, and the county, of course, provides services, general government services. I'm part of general government, the Board of Supervisors, roads that are in the county unincorporated, and then cities get 11 cents. And then redevelopment successor agencies, really for debt service, get, I think it's 10, and then special districts get 10 cents. So that makes up that whole dollar. So schools get that big chunk because it's the old Prop 13 formula, but a lot of that 63 cents, not a lot, but certainly some of it, probably, I don't know the details, goes up to Northern California because the state owns the schools. So we just send the money basically back to the state, and then the state redistributes it based on their school formulas. Does that help? Sorry. I think we had one more question, and I think that's probably the last one we'll take, if that's, or, whatever to Steve. Yes?
Thank you. Good morning. Yes, when does a property get reassessed for property taxes, since we have this increase in values?
Thank you again. So the question was on the reassessment, when does property get reassessed? That is the assessor's bailiwick, but I know obviously some general things, so I don't want to say too much. Obviously, if there's an ownership change, that is a change that would be recognized. You need to file a PCOR, a preliminary change of ownership, in the records, and that triggers them to make a change. In addition, if you are doing improvement to your property, some improvements are tax exempt, like solar panels and some energy efficient. You might not be taxed, but you would have a permit. So if you're doing substantial work to your property, that also would generate a supplemental bill. Now, not all counties have supplemental bills. They may just have an annual bill, but our county does follow and does these supplemental bills. And so if you put in a pool, you would then have it, that's added value to your house. So they would add it. Obviously, if you're adding something small and there's no permits, the county probably doesn't know about that. But if you're adding anything that goes through the cities, the local governments work together, and so that's where they would be knowing that you're actually adding value to your house. And that's the intent, is that your value on the assessor's books is going to be the value of your house, and then you are limited to that Prop 13 for tax purposes because you may have a lower basis. But if you added a pool for $100,000, that part of it would get valued essentially at the higher rate.
So here you say a permit would trigger it.
Yes, generally it would be a permit or some added in a value, but that's certainly my general understanding. I mean, they do go out and they will do in-site visits. They can do a variety of methods, but the permit is probably a common one for them to look at. But they do, some of you may have had the assessor come out and do a field inspection. So good. Any others? If not, okay, we have one more.
That 17% that we retain in Newport Beach.
Uh-huh.
What formula do they use to calculate that, and can we do anything as voters to get it increased?
Again, I believe it's all Prop 13 related. That's why the newer cities got less. So I believe it's all related to Prop 13 back in 1978, but I'm not that familiar with all of the specific details. But that's, when that 1% then was split, because everyone used to do their own taxes, they combined it, and then of course they had to do all the tax rate areas for the cities that were in place at that time. Well, thank you again. I'm honored to be here. Appreciate your support, and I'll turn it back over to Steve.
Thank you, Shari. Yeah, she is a dynamo for sure. Very animated and excited about her job, and obviously doing a great job because she keeps running unopposed. So no one even wants to take her on. They can't even find a crack in her position. So again, thank you for all that, and she has provided a link to the 10 tax tips. So if you're interested, please reach out to me, and I'm happy to send it to you electronically. Earlier, when I made the introductions, I admitted to do something I almost always do this time of year, is introduce the candidates for city council that are with us this morning. So first, I'll introduce my sister, Robin Grant. She's running for city council in District 5. So far, she's unopposed. Hopefully, that'll remain the same for another 5 weeks until the registration period closes. And then also, I'd like to introduce Tom Miller. He's running for city council in District 1. That's going to be the race to watch. I think there's going to be a lot of money spent and high visibility, which leads me to, sorry about the echo here, leads me to remind you that in this room on August 18th will be our candidate forum. The registration period closes August 12th, so assuming that Joy Brenner, who's an incumbent, is running, and she says she is going to be in the race, It won't be extended, and so August 12th is the cutoff. August 18th is the date of our candidate forum right here. We'll probably have 150 plus people, so you make sure you show up early if you're coming. And it's always great. We pride ourselves on being the very first candidate forum, so you really get the unpolished answers, the real answers, not the, okay, we had time to think about these questions and 2 months later, and then it's always the same thing. So usually you would get a few good kernels of comedy, or if they're not prepared, then you know that as well. So definitely make sure you're here for that. We have some other meetings though between now and then. I'll just quickly list them off. Next week, our young professional group Navigate, who our chair was here. I don't know if he's still here. Tyler, he had to leave, I think. They're having their monthly meeting at Helmsman Ale House. It's going to be a great evening. The brewmaster there, it's a microbrewery there. It's going to give them a little lesson on how to brew beer. And then there's going to be a competition on tasting and figuring out what type of beer it is and what it's made up of and the alcoholic content. So that'll be a lot of fun. July 15th at the Chamber, if you're a Chamber member or if you're nice to me, I'll put you on the guest list. We have our Chamber barbecue. We do 3 of them in the summer. This one's going to be a little different, though. This is going to be a cigar and scotch night. So if you're not a cigar smoker, you may want to pass on this one, or if you're offended by cigar smoke, you may want to pass or stay on the outer perimeter. But it's going to be a lot of fun. We've got Vargas Vodka. Cappy's Cafe is bringing their Bloody Mary mix that's sold in Costco's now. 6 Costco's sell Cappy's Cafe Bloody Mary mix. We have a professional bartender, and we have a Scotch distributor that's going to be doing tastings as well. So it should be a lot of fun. It's free. It's 4:30 to 6:30, but we really limit it to Chamber members and guests. It's not just an open event. So please make sure you fit into one of those 2 categories. Our networking luncheon is going to be at the Bahia Corinthian Yacht Club on July 20th. You can sign up for that, talk to Annette in the back. And all these events will be on our website. You can check it out there at newportbeach.com. Our Government Affairs Committee meeting is on July 21st. Our speaker is going to talk about the San Onofre decommissioning process. As you may or may not know, they closed down electric power generation at San Onofre a few years back. They're in the process of basically dismantling that, and someday you'll just see, plants growing out there, I think. Someday, way in the future though, probably not until like 2050 or something. But I actually heard this talk already, and it's very interesting. If you have any interest in that, I'd encourage you to attend either by Zoom. I'm not sure if it's going to be a Zoom meeting or in person. I'd like to get back to in person on that, but one way or another, you can sign up for it again at newportbeach.com. And our last event of the month is our Sunset Mixer on July 28th. We're still working on the location of it, but we should have that, hopefully by today or tomorrow. So look for that. We always have a great time. Where have we been lately? Helmsman Ale House. Bayside, yeah, really nice. Yeah. Oh, and Olea, Gracias Madre. We had so they're always a lot of fun, great locations. If you have any questions about any of this, give me a call, or Annette and I will be around. And I don't know if Shari has time to stick around for a little bit for a picture or another question. So thank you all for coming. We'll see you next month.